But if these soldiers are almost entirely forgotten in India, in Italy it's an altogether different story, particularly on days such as the 25th of April, Liberation Day in the country, when Nazi forces were driven out of Italy towards the end of the Second World War. In small war memorials across the country, such as this, the Coriano Ridge War Memorial, Indian soldiers are honored every year by people who remember the contributions of our brave men.
I've attended several functions for Liberation Days in several villages, and everywhere the story is the same. It's the Indian soldiers who walked in first. It's the Indian soldiers who established the communication and contacts and really helped them. And I have seen at 2 or 3 places where the ladies particularly remember them for the respect they had for the citizen, for the old, for the children. They fed them and they got their lives together. It was the Indians always in the front.
But the Italian campaign didn't end at Cassino. The retreating Germans had set up another formidable line of defense further north called the Gothic Line. As the Battle of Monte Cassino roared, Allied forces which had established a beachhead at Anzio broke out and headed towards Rome. Between June and August 1944, the Allies slowly advanced towards the Gothic Line. Despite initial successes, a major Allied attack on Bologna was defeated, as was a large-scale counterattack by the Germans.
And I'm happy to say that I was in that battle when a lonely sepoy, totally unpudded, Namdev Jadhav, got the Victoria Cross for outstanding gallantry. There was another Naik, Hari Lakde, whom I remember to this day. The advance of the whole division was held up because of one German post with machine guns. This chap crawled up through this gully or valley, pulled the gun, hot gun out with his hands, turned it round and got rid of the Germans. All his hands were burnt. He should have got a Victoria Cross.
All through this period, Indian soldiers continued moving up north through the Italian peninsula. Some of their experiences beautifully described by Michael Ondaatje in his award-winning novel, The English Patient. He was the brownness of rock, the brownness of a muddy, storm-fed river, and something in him made him step back from the naive innocence of such a remark. The successful diffusing of a bomb ended novels. Wise, white, fatherly men shook hands, were acknowledged, and limped away, having been coaxed out of solitude for this special occasion. But he was a professional, and he remained the foreigner, the Sikh. The Sikh in The English Patient was the sapper Kirpal Singh, but his story of love, loss and wandering, of moving from village to village through a stunning countryside destroyed by war, is exactly the way it was. Small detachments of Indian soldiers lived in tool sheds and cattle stalls. Alarm wires were strung and likely approaches mined or booby-trapped. For other Indian soldiers, the odyssey through war-scarred Italy brought them face to face with the history of one of the oldest civilizations in the world. Soldiers of the Marathas discovered and protected some of Italy's greatest art treasures from the Uffizi Art Gallery in Florence.
We went into this lovely place. We found a place for the commanding officer and we settled for the night. I was asked to go and check the guards. And I heard our Maratha boys giggling away. So I asked them in Marathi, what's the problem? Now, you know, our troops are not used to seeing Venus de Milos and all, you know. So they said, come down. They took me to the basement. And believe me, in that basement were all the art treasures of Florence, from the famous Uffizi galleries. And the most famous one was one of Venus. So that's what they were giggling for. So we had to inform the commanding officer. And once the wires started flashing, the whole world came to know that the Marathas had secured these art treasures.
But if there was only one constant in the war, it was the knowledge that despite their retreat to the north of Italy, the German army had still not been defeated, and the fall of the Gustav Line and Rome did not mean the end. Further north, the German Field Marshal Albert Kesselring had established a second line of defense, the Gothic Line, and Indian soldiers, like other allies, were stopped in their tracks on the 4th of August 44, after an advance of 270 miles in just 64 days. The battle was now for the Po Valley, to breach the Gothic Line and advance into either southern France or into northern Yugoslavia. The final offensive in the Italy campaign came the next year, April Fool's Day 1945, the Allies throwing everything they had at the Germans, breaking through their defenses and racing across the Po Valley. By the 28th of April, all the passes in the Alps were in Allied hands, and on the 2nd of May, the German general Vietinghoff surrendered his army. The long, bloody Italy campaign was over. More than 5,600 Indian soldiers had been killed in an epic coalition battle.
I didn't know them closely, but we took over from them twice. They were small men, sturdy, carrying their great loads, trudging out, great soldiers, and they earned a lot of respect from us. And later, much further north from here, we took over again from them. They always called us Johnny. They were good men.
Oh, bury me at casino, my duty to England is done. And when you get back to Blighty and you're drinking your whiskey and rum, remember the old Indian soldier when the war that he fought has been won.